Hello, I'm Chris Burns, and welcome to The Network. Hard talk with a matrix of newsmakers. The headlines. Turkey's elections on 7 June will be a key test of the country's commitment to democracy and its bid to join the EU. A crackdown on dissent has worried Brussels. The EU's progress report on Turkey's reforms notes improvements, but accuses the government of undermining human rights and press freedom. Accession talks have been slow go. Can the EU remain ambiguous about membership and expect Turkey to reform? How could elections change EU-Turkish relations? How important is Turkey to the EU and the region as a stabilizing force and byway for the pipelines? How could common interests overcome resistance to Turkish EU membership? Now, wired into this edition of The Network here at the European Parliament in Brussels, Selim Yenel, Turkey's ambassador to the EU, who said in a recent interview that the Turkish-EU relationship is beset with mistrust, frustration, disillusionment, and disappointment. Katy Perry, Dutch socialist member of the Parliament's Foreign Affairs Committee. She's also rapporteur of the Parliament's resolution on the latest progress report on Turkey. And Amanda Paul, senior policy analyst at the European Policy Center and an expert on Turkish foreign and domestic policy. Welcome to all of you. Let's have a question to all of you, starting with Selim. President Erdogan wants to rewrite the constitution to create a Turkish-style presidentialism. What would that mean for Turkey's bid to join the EU?
Well, thank you very much, first of all, for having us here. I don't think it would change anything at all, because whether it's a presidential system or a parliamentary system, the EU doesn't care about that. As long as we do the reforms, as long as we meet the standards of the EU, what kind of system we have doesn't really matter. So I don't think that will be in the cards.
Okay, Katy, what do you think? Do you agree?
Well, in general, we have in Europe, of course, both presidential and parliamentary systems, and both can be democratic. What is, of course, very important, that after the elections, there has to be a new constitution, and that is necessary in order to have more reforms, more democratic reform. Making it a presidential system does not necessarily make it a more democratic.
Okay, Amanda, where do you stand on that?
I think, in fact, it could worsen relations, because we could see a further centralisation of power in the hands of the president. And given his track record, this could further undermine democracy, rule of law and civil liberties.
Selim, would you like to answer that?
Well, I don't think we should jump into conclusions, not prejudging the outcome. First of all, we have to see what the elections will produce and what kind of a constitutional system we'll have. And in the end, the people will vote.
Okay, now let's consider the pro-Turkish HDP party could become a spoiler for Mr. Erdogan's quest for a one-party government. Attacks on the left-wing party have escalated, including bombings. Is this really a free and fair election, Katy?
In principle, Turkey has always had free and fair elections, but what makes this election very different is for the first time, HDP, a pro-Kurdish party, wants to participate as a party, and it has to pass this high 10% threshold. That makes this election different from any others we had in the past.
Amanda, free and fair so far?
I think it would be a game changer having the HDP in the parliament, but free and fair, one has to question the fair playing field. Obviously, other political parties, apart from the ruling AKP, have not had the sort of media exposure as they have had, which I think would question the fair playing field.
Okay, Selim, what do you think?
Well, I mean, let's see how the AKP first came to power in 2002. I mean, they were unknown, and the establishment was there, and nevertheless, they won. So we have proven that there are fair and free elections in Turkey since 1950.
Okay, how could the outcome of this election affect the accession talks with the EU? Katy?
Whether it's a one-party government, whether it's a coalition government, there has to be the willingness to continue the path of reforms, and that's the most important thing.
Amanda, what do you think? How could this affect the accession talks? Because they've not gone on very well up to now.
Well, I agree with that, but I would say we need to see a real change from the side of the EU as well, because certain countries in the EU have undermined the process, have blocked the chapters, which has had a very negative impact and left a great deal of frustration in Ankara.
Okay. The European Parliament's resolution on the latest EU progress report is bogged down by amendments. You know that quite well, Katy. The vote was postponed until June. How could the report affect the accession talks? It praises Turkey for efforts to reach a settlement with the Kurds and its support of Syrian refugees, but it also criticizes what it calls government interference in the judiciary and bans on social media. How do you respond to that, Selim?
Well, I mean, in all fairness to Katy, I think she's tried to produce a balanced, fair report. But it's not easy because she has to cater to all kinds of different political parties. And right now we're seeing even a deterioration of that report. But we believe that, Turkey is left out of the game. We're not there to respond to any of the accusations or allegations. So it's a one-sided event.
All right, Katie, you think the report is being unfair to Turkey?
It reflects very much the feelings here in this parliament, how we view the situation in Turkey. And I hope that this report, that's also the reason to go immediately now to Turkey, is to also have the discussion with the Turkish public, with the Turkish politicians.
Okay, let's move on to another issue, is violence against women. There was almost 300 murders last year. A talent show performer was recently shot in the head. Her ex-boyfriend was charged. Is the government doing enough to defend women and to prevent this violence? Amanda.
Well, I mean, I think if you put it into a historical perspective, yes, Turkey has always had an issue with violence against women, but steps have been taken by the government to crack down on this. So there has been, a gradual improvement, but there's obviously space to do much more.
Selim, the government, how is the government responding to this, especially during an election campaign?
Well, I mean, this has been a case that has been bothering the government and previous governments. But the fact is now there's more reporting that we see. And I guess that's why people are thinking that there's more violence. Actually, the fact that there's more reporting is helping us. And I think that the more we see about this, the more we can respond to it.
Okay, I know there are a lot of issues we have to deal with here, but a divided Cyprus remains also a stumbling point in these accession talks. Who's at fault here? Ambassador, you've said the EU lacks a visionary perspective to settle the issue. Katie, how do you respond to that?
I think the Turkish Cypriots have voted a leader with a clear agenda wanting a settlement. We can say the same on the Greek side. There is a president who already in 2004 voted in favor of the Annan plan. So there's a unique opportunity looking at this point to find finally a settlement to Cyprus. And that is, of course, that will give a great impetus also to the accession talks of Turkey.
Well, then, Amanda, how much can you fault Turkey in this process?
Clearly, in 2004, Turkey voted to support the Annan plan, which was a significant shift. So I don't think it's fair to say now we won't solve Cyprus because of Turkey. I think everybody has to play a role. Let's get away from this blame game.
Okay. Selim, would you like to answer any of that?
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be a game changer if we have if we succeed in resolving this issue once and for all, because it will change not only the Turkish and Greek Cypriots relationship, it'll change the relationship between Greece and Turkey, the whole of Europe, and totally our accession process. It'll open the way, but it doesn't mean that we're out of the woods.
Okay, very quickly, let me shift to energy. The EU and Turkey have been cooperating on energy, but now Turkey and Russia have signed this so-called the contract on a so-called Turkish Stream pipeline. Is Turkey going its own way, and could that be retaliation for the energy chapter being blocked? Amanda.
Yeah, I mean, Turkey has made no secret of the fact that it wants to be an energy hub. It wants to trade in gas. And, of course, the issue of the energy chapter being blocked. I mean, this hasn't helped the EU's position of trying to get Turkey on board 100%. But I think, ultimately, Turkey is dedicated to the TANAP Southern Gas Corridor as a flagship project.
Okay. Selim, how do you?
Well, I would, disagree with the fact that the energy chapter has anything to do with it, because we are still...
No linkage there?
No linkage whatsoever, because we're still having a good good dialogue on the economics, on the energy side, with Mr. Šefčovič, the commissioner, and Mr. Cañete as well. And I think that energy is going to help us very much. But nevertheless, I don't think that the energy chapter being closed or open doesn't really change much. And just to make a correction, that agreement has not been signed. We're still negotiating with the Russians.
Katie, let me ask you very quickly, at the very end, after all of this, how much do Turkey and the EU need each other?
I believe very much, and I think that's also a realization we have here in the European Parliament. When we look now at foreign affairs and what's happening in the region, we just mentioned Russia, talking about Syria, talking about anti-terrorism cooperation, energy. These are all areas where Europe very much needs Turkey. But Turkey also very much needs Europe when it comes to trade relationship, when it comes to visa liberalization. So in the end, I think something we all have to admit is that we have to find a cooperation, and it's up to us to choose whether it's a good or a bad cooperation.
Thanks, Katie. I'm sorry we're all out of time. I'd like to thank our guests, Selim Yenel, Katie Piri, and Amanda Paul. I'm Chris Burns, and until next time, thanks for connecting with the network.